There are things we carry for a lifetime, words we never said, choices we can't take back. But what if sharing them now could set someone free? This is Aging Out Loud, where untold stories finally find their voice.
I stood at the podium looking out at a sea of faces I barely recognized. My wife of 43 years lay in the casket behind me. And for the first time in my life, I was about to say the words I should have said every single day we were together. The words that got stuck somewhere between my throat and my pride. The words that defined everything I failed to be as a husband. I loved her. That's what I said at her funeral. 3 simple words that somehow felt like lifting a mountain. And as I heard my own voice crack in that chapel, I realized I had just spoken those words aloud for the very first time in our entire marriage. My name is Robert, and I want to tell you about the biggest mistake of my life. Not a mistake of action, but a mistake of omission. A mistake that cost me everything, even though I thought I was doing everything right. You see, I was raised in a different time. Born in 1952, I grew up in a household where men didn't express emotions. My father worked 16-hour days at the steel mill, came home exhausted, ate dinner in silence, and went to bed. That was love, according to my family. Love was providing. Love was showing up. Love was duty and responsibility, not words and feelings. When I married Margaret in 1978, I brought this blueprint with me. I was 26, she was 24, and we met at a church social. She was radiant, always laughing, always finding joy in the smallest things. I was drawn to her light like a moth to flame, though I never told her that either. Our wedding day was perfect. She glowed in her simple white dress, and when the pastor asked us to exchange vows, she looked into my eyes and said, "I love you, Robert, with every fiber of my being." I responded with, "I promise to honor and cherish you." Even then, at our own wedding, I couldn't bring myself to say those 3 words back. The early years of our marriage fell into a pattern. Margaret would say, "I love you," as I left for work each morning. I would respond with, "See you tonight," or "Drive safely." When she said it before bed, I'd reply with, "Good night, dear," or simply kiss her forehead. She never stopped trying. She never stopped hoping. But slowly, over the years, I watched something dim in her eyes. I thought I was showing love in other ways. I worked overtime to buy her the house she dreamed of. I fixed everything that broke without being asked. I remembered every anniversary and birthday. I opened her car door and pulled out her chair at restaurants. I was faithful, dependable, present. In my mind, these actions spoke louder than any words ever could. But Margaret was different. She needed words. She needed to hear that she was loved, valued, cherished. And the more I withheld those words, the more she seemed to need them. It became this terrible cycle where her need for verbal affirmation made me even more uncomfortable with expressing it. I remember one evening in 1987, about 9 years into our marriage, Margaret was cooking dinner, humming softly to herself, when she turned to me and said, "Robert, do you love me?" The question hung in the air like smoke. I felt my chest tighten, my throat close up. Instead of answering, I said, "Would I be here if I didn't?" She nodded and turned back to the stove, but I saw her shoulders sag just a little. That moment haunts me now. All she needed was yes. All she needed was, "Of course I love you." but I couldn't give her that simple gift. The truth is, I was terrified of vulnerability. Saying I love you felt like giving someone the power to destroy me. It felt like admitting weakness, like opening myself up to rejection or loss. So I built walls of practicality and duty around my heart, thinking they would protect me. Instead, they imprisoned me. Our children came along in the late 80s and early 90s. Sarah in 1988, Michael in 1991. Margaret threw herself into motherhood with the same warmth and affection she had always shown me. She told our children she loved them dozens of times each day. She sang to them, cuddled them, celebrated their smallest victories with unbridled joy. I loved those children with every fiber of my being, but I showed it differently. I coached Michael's Little League team for 6 years. I taught Sarah how to change a tire and balance a checkbook. I attended every school play, every graduation, every important moment. But I struggled to tell them I loved them too. Sarah figured it out first. When she was 16, she confronted me after a particularly tense family dinner. "Dad, why can't you just say you love us? We know you do, but it would mean everything to hear it." I mumbled something about actions speaking louder than words, but her question planted a seed of doubt in my mind.
Meanwhile, Margaret had stopped saying I love you to me as frequently. Not because she loved me less, but because 20 years of non-reciprocation had worn her down. She poured her love into our children instead, creating this beautiful, warm atmosphere in our home that somehow made my emotional absence even more glaring. The turning point came in 2013. Margaret was diagnosed with breast cancer at 59. I remember sitting in that sterile doctor's office, holding her hand while the oncologist explained treatment options. She squeezed my fingers and whispered, "I love you, Robert. No matter what happens, I love you." I squeezed back and said, "We'll get through this together." Even facing cancer, even when she was vulnerable and scared, I couldn't give her the words she needed to hear. The next 8 years were a battle. Margaret fought with grace and courage that amazed everyone around her. She endured chemotherapy, radiation, surgeries, and countless hospital stays. Through it all, she maintained her warmth, her humor, and her incredible capacity for joy. She would wake up bald and nauseous and still find reasons to smile. I was her rock during those years. I drove her to every appointment, held her hand through every treatment, researched every new therapy option. I took early retirement to care for her full time. I thought I was showing love in the most profound way possible through my actions and dedication. But even as her body grew weaker, she continued to tell me she loved me. Even when speaking became difficult, she would whisper those words. And even then, even knowing our time was limited, I would respond with, "Rest now," or "I'm here," or "You're gonna be fine." The last conversation we had was on a Tuesday morning in March 2021. Margaret had been sleeping more and more, and I knew the end was near. She opened her eyes, looked directly at me, and said, "Robert, I have loved you every single day of our marriage. I need you to know that." My throat felt like it was closing. This was my moment. This was when I should have finally said the words that had been locked inside me for 4 decades. Instead, I kissed her forehead and said, "I know, sweetheart. I know." She died 3 days later on a Friday afternoon, holding my hand. Standing at that podium a week later, looking out at all the people whose lives Margaret had touched, I finally understood what I had done. I had taken a woman who radiated love and slowly convinced her that her emotional needs didn't matter. I had prioritized my own discomfort over her deepest need for connection. As I spoke about her life, about her kindness and strength and unwavering love, I realized that everyone in that room knew Margaret loved them. She had told them. She had expressed it freely and often. But I was the one person she had loved most deeply. And I was the one person who had never heard those words from her in return. I loved her, I said through tears. I loved her more than life itself, and I was too proud and too scared to tell her. The weeks after the funeral were the longest of my life. I found letters Margaret had written but never sent, journals where she questioned whether I truly cared for her, cards she had bought me with messages of love that she had never given because she knew I would be uncomfortable. My children and I have talked extensively since then. They've helped me understand that love isn't just a feeling you carry privately. It's a gift you give to others. Margaret didn't tell me she loved me for her own benefit. She said it because she knew I needed to hear it, even when I couldn't say it back. I'm 73 now, and I've learned to say I love you to my children and grandchildren. It still doesn't come naturally, but I force myself to do it because I've seen the cost of withholding those words. I've seen how emotional starvation can slowly erode even the strongest love. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself in my story, please don't make my mistake. Don't wait for the perfect moment or until you feel comfortable. The person you love needs to hear those words from you. They need to know that their love is received and returned, not just assumed. I never told my wife I loved her until her funeral. Don't let that be your story too.